Welcome to Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague, Mary Gamba. The programming that you're about to see was taped earlier this year. Clearly, so much has changed since then, and unfortunately, a lot of uncertainty and fear remain. However, the issues and the topics raised in this edition of Lessons in Leadership will still matter once we get through these very challenging and difficult times. So without further ado, Lessons in Leadership. Welcome to Lessons in Leadership. I'm Steve Adubato. You can see it right there. With the lovely and talented, my colleague Mary Gamba. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Especially when you introduce me like that, it's a good day.
Well, that's because your review is coming up and I wasn't going to give you the money you expected. That being said, I'm Steve Adubato. This is in Lessons in Leadership. Look at all these wonderful, this is part of our leadership library, a whole range of books beyond my book, Lessons in Leadership. There are other great books here. We'll be plugging them throughout the series. Before I introduce the very lovely and talented and outspoken young lady we have on this edition of Lessons in Leadership, Michele Adubato, the CEO of the North Ward Center, and my older sister. I'm joking. So she's
you sure are
the same
joking.
age. We're twins. So Mary, tell folks where they can find us.
Absolutely. They can find us on our website, stand-deliver.com. Also on Facebook, Steve Adubato, PhD. That's Adubato. And they could actually subscribe to us on Apple Podcast and on Google Play.
But there's more than that. We're also being found these days on the AM 970. Those are our partners in New York at the great radio station in Lower Manhattan on Wall Street. Find us on their website, AM 970, plus Fios On Demand, ROINJ, as well as New Jersey Business and Industry Association site, and other places. We're going to be all over soon. And our funders are?
They are New Jersey Resources and Prager Metis. We thank them very much.
Prager Metis, one of the great accounting firms.
They sure are, absolutely. And RWJ Barnabas Health, we would like to thank them as well.
Great stuff. So let me introduce on Lessons in Leadership my talented and very outspoken and strong younger sister, Michele Adubato, who is the CEO of the North Ward Center. How you doing?
Good, very good.
You like
and
this?
I'm going to get in big trouble if I don't say also the founder of the Center for Autism.
Nice.
Yeah.
And can we plug a website as well for the Center for Autism? Would you like to do that?
www.centerforautism.org.
And the
Can't get
North Ward
easier than that.
Centers?
Is help me. Northwardcenter.org.
Wow, that's really a lot.
So I have people for that.
Let's get right into this.
I love it.
Have you always...
I can't remember. You can't either, so
Listen,
I don't remember anything.
Here's my question. People, your people.
People.
Are they your people, right? Meaning you want to mold them into what you believe they need to be the best team, because, by the way, that's what Lessons in Leadership is all about, is learning. Are they, because you are highly intense as I am, have ridiculously high standards, do not suffer fools lightly, and are impatient? I wonder where we got that from.
Certainly our dad.
Yes, Steve Sr., who is the founder of the North Ward Center. In all seriousness, do you find that it's challenging being as high-powered, type A, high standards, no BS, no excuses, and that's all meant to be a compliment in all seriousness, and others who don't live that way?
Yeah, it sure is, because what happens is you have to be your best self at all times, meaning who you are as a leader. And the problem is that you also have to find where people belong.
What does that mean?
You have to find where they fit.
That Jim Collins, the book right in front of you,
absolutely.
he talks about putting the right people in the right seats.
Very important.
On the bus. Go ahead.
Very important. Because one of the things, like, someone could be very talented in a certain area, but if they don't fit what you need them to do, it's not going to work. So I think, I've evolved, hopefully, as a leader.
From what to what?
Well, I was, intense is a good word. I think I still am intense. But I do take a moment.
I'm going with passionate.
Yeah,
You're passionate.
I do take a moment now to say, the people that I have around me are trying their hardest. Because sometimes I think we would all be like, you're just not doing enough. Why can't you do this? And it's like, first you have to come from a place of these are really good people who are really trying to do their best. Now, my role then, I think my role has changed because coming from like a micromanager.
By the way, describe your background before you came into the CEO position of the North Ward Center, celebrating its 50th anniversary, which is a big year. 2020?
2020.
That's right. This will be heard and seen in 2020.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Right?
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Before you came back to the organization our dad started 50 years ago,
right.
You were a leader where?
So I was a principal for a long time at New Jersey Regional Day School. I spent about 25 years in Newark Public School System. That gets you ready. That certainly gets you ready. Because you're dealing with, I think, a group of people that, we want to do the right thing, but maybe their knowledge base is definitely mixed, and you have to try to do your best with what you have. And you don't have the ability to just kind of maneuver, and that's like a huge thing that you need to do, which where I am now, at the North Ward Center is, my ability to do that. So the North Ward Center, again, has been around for 50 years, and it's a multi-service nonprofit. Started out with preschool, started out with youth leadership development. We have over 700 preschoolers, Abbott Preschool. We have a private preschool. We have the largest youth leadership development program in the city of Newark. We have Casa Israel, adult medical day programming. We have family services. My father also founded Robert Treat Academy.
A charter school.
Blue Ribbon Charter School.
Recognized nationally.
Absolutely.
So, it's interesting. By the way, if you want to find out more about Michele and I making reference to our father, Steve Adubato Sr.,
Right.
you should Google Steve Adubato Sr. A lot of interesting things will come up.
Yeah.
But I write a lot about our father in my book, Lessons in Leadership. That's where the name of this show came from. And there's a lot of very candid stuff about his leadership style, which I'll give you the opportunity to describe. Because I often do this with Mary, and I think she thinks I'm exaggerating or engaging in hyperbole. Describe the leadership style of our dad, both at home.
Is that a style? Would you consider that a style?
Okay, what would you call it?
I don't think you can put it in a book.
Well, I did put it in a book.
You put it for a couple of pages and you glossed over it because it was not a style.
Okay, what did we learn about life and leadership growing up,
which
has influenced who you are as a leader today?
Absolutely, but it also influenced me on things that I shouldn't do.
I said that in the book. Go ahead.
So I think the biggest takeaway we can take from our dad in terms of leadership is at high standards. Definitely, it has to be the best. Good isn't good enough. How do you get good to great? And that's really the challenge. The passion, the mission, the focus. I think the things that...
How about the yelling?
The yelling doesn't help.
Tell us more.
So I think what I learned from my dad in terms of leadership, again, the good things are, the passion and the focus and the mission-driven
and the vision,
purpose.
too. Having a vision nobody else even sees, much less buys into.
And that's what I call the curse. I have the curse of vision.
Why is it a curse? It's a good thing as a leader.
Sometimes you see things before it happens, and it's almost unfair to the people around you because I start in mid-sentences, and they're like, what? I'm like, okay, now we're going to go here.
Hold on one second. I call that connecting the dots. Mary's like, what dots? Mary connects the dots and she sees dots I don't see. Mm-hmm. She says it's a curse.
It is a curse. Any great visionary, any great leader, and I understand completely what you're saying, once you have that great, grandiose idea, then you have to get people to follow and you have to get people to believe in it and buy into it and get it done. And the hardest thing is getting the right people on board to get that done for you and to see it from your perspective as well.
Will they ever?
The other thing is, and that's the key, Mary, because if it's just your vision and you can't share it, and I think that was kind of like where my father lacked. When you have somebody like that is so overbearing and powerful, is that sometimes the people around just will shut down.
Right.
And that's what I don't want. And it actually is very upsetting to, and I'll be in meetings and I'm like, I do question myself and say, why am I the only one talking right now? Are you not hearing me? Is it not connecting? So I do a lot of, self-reflection.
Yeah.
So I can say, I make mistakes, as we all do.
Are you a micromanager?
Yeah, absolutely. But I've tried to really, kind of walk away from that in terms of micromanaging. And what I've realized is you can't be after a certain point.
I call it strategic micromanaging. Pick your spots.
Yeah, but if you do that all the time, you're either going to wind up in the hospital,
Yeah.
you're going to have the high blood pressure through the roof, and no one will continue the vision because it's much more than myself.
You backed off.
And then people won't believe,
Well,
I was going to say, people won't believe in themselves. If you're constantly right there, it's almost like raising a child. If you're constantly, and Steve and I talk about this a lot, if you're there to save them all the time, if you're there to tell them how to do something half of the time before they've even begun it, it definitely causes them to question their own ability to get things done on their own.
Yeah.
By the way, Michelle's talking about self-reflection. This book by Dr. Daniel Goleman, I'm a big fan of because he coined the phrase, quote unquote, emotional intelligence. And I talk about him a lot because emotional intelligence to me is a lot of things, but the one thing I know it is knowing yourself and being very self-reflective. Is it any more difficult to be a strong leader in an organization where there's such a strong legacy of your father as the CEO, not just your uncle or your cousin or a distant relative? Go ahead.
Absolutely, but I came in with a lot of tools. I came in as the founder of the Center for Autism. I came in with an excellent reputation of managing and leading.
Do you often think, what would Steve Sr. do?
I do. And I often say to myself, I think he would be really proud of that.
I know he would.
But I often say also, that's not something my dad would do. But, that being said, I am spending a lot of time on what's going to happen after me.
Let's stay with this. And by the way, can we thank our funders again at New Jersey Resources, Prager Metis, the accounting firm, and also RWJ Barnabas Health, and a whole range of others.
And for people on the radio, we'll remind, we're talking to Michele Adubato.
Well, this is Michele Adubato, the CEO of the North Ward Center, celebrating its 50th anniversary in 2020. Go on our website, by the way, at stand-deliver.com to check out more. But Michele, let me jump right back into this. We have you for a couple more minutes. Leadership in the not-for-profit sector versus, hey, bottom line, got to make money, business world. Any different?
Well, in this forum, in this climate that we're in, you better start, looking at your finances and understanding where all your funding stream is. So I wouldn't say it may be different in certain contexts. Absolutely. I mean, it's not easy to compete out there, as we've seen, like many nonprofits that just can't make it, and they rely. I've heard so where did this go? Oh, we had a grant one year, we don't have a grant. That's not the way the North Ward Center works. So we are in, as we say, the business of social service. And that's certainly from our dad.
Business.
Absolutely.
And what would he say about a program that wasn't either bringing in money or was failing financially? What would he say?
Don't do it. Not for us. And I do have that same philosophy of if we can't if this does not help us to sustain our central office or whatever we need to do, it's probably a wonderful thing. It's just not for us.
Real quick, before I let you go, the Center for Autism, describe it and why it matters personally and professionally to you.
Listen, first of all, running a nonprofit has always been, my heart, who I am. The Center for Autism is a culmination of everything about my profession and what I expect to do for people and what we need to do for our community. Because unfortunately, in Newark, there are no services, little to no services for people with autism and their family. And literally, if we were not there, if we were not the foundation, there would be nothing there. But not only are we there, they're very aware of us, and we're such a huge part of this community. And that community is part of who I am. It taught me, I can say that people with autism have taught me more about human nature than any other person, even with, I would put my dad in that, because they've taught me about humanity, and they've taught me about integrity.
You've been listening to Michele Adubato, and the person who clearly has taught her the most is sitting right here. It's, no, I'm joking.
Oh, thanks, Steve. It's me.
Hey, stop fooling around. This is a serious podcast, video cast, could be heard, could be seen, and that's why we have the best leaders from anywhere in the tri-state area. Michele Adubato, my little sister doing big things, the CEO of the North Ward Center, also the founder, the head of the person who created the Center for Autism, celebrating 50th anniversary at the North Ward Center, an organization our dad founded in 1970 as a school teacher in Newark, making less than no money. Trust me, we were the kids, we knew. And he created this organization because he had a dream and he wanted to help other people. You've done well. I'm proud of you. We're all proud of you.
Thank you.
Dad would be proud of you. This has been Lessons in Leadership. We'll take a quick break. I want to thank our funders again at RWJ Barnabas Health, Prager Metis, the accounting firm, New Jersey Resources, a terrific energy company down at the Jersey Shore. I'm Steve Adubato. That's Mary Gamba. This is Michele Adubato, and we'll be right back.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
This edition of Lessons in Leadership is brought to you by Gibbons PC, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, New Jersey Resources, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825. Welcome back to Lessons in Leadership. I'm Steve Adubato and my trusted colleague, Mary Gamba. We were just listening to Michele Adubato, the CEO of the North Ward Center, the founder of the Center for Autism. Your biggest takeaways?
Just really knowing the people on your team is a big part of leadership. Michele talked a lot about she can't do it on her own, even though she would like to. We would all like to, right? We talk about you and I being micromanagers. If you want something right, do it yourself. But you cannot be an effective leader if you're going to rely on doing it all yourself.
These couple other things that she mentioned. And again, I don't want to obsess over this whole thing of the fact that our dad was the founder of the North Ward Center and we learned leadership and about life from him, the things that were effective in our view and also the things that weren't not particularly effective. But I'm curious about this because we talk so much about that because our dad was such a public person and founded these organizations, was also a leader in the teachers union in Newark, New Jersey, where we grew up. To what degree do you feel you've learned about leadership from your family? P.S., do you separate leadership from life?
Oh, those are two really powerful questions. So
that's what I do.
I know, you do it well. So the first part, as far as my family, and you and I have talked about this before, we were sharing before about Little House on the Prairie, just my upbringing was very much the opposite of what you just talked about with your sister, Michele.
I joked in that show and called it, we lived in the dysfunctional house in Newark, New Jersey.
Yes, and you and Michele had described how your dad had raised you.
It was volatile and crazy and dysfunctional and angry and no one listened.
There was no yelling in my family growing up. There was zero yelling to the point that almost to a fault, and my parents will say that today, because then when I did get out into the real world and things maybe didn't go the way that they were supposed to, there wasn't somebody there to say, it's going to be okay. Sometimes it's not as collegial as that if you do something wrong, whether at work or at school, and just in life, frankly. So on the one hand, it was great because it taught me to be very empathetic and understanding, but it was a great upbringing in terms of just overall, just knowing how to be sensitive toward others' feelings.
Empathy.
Yes, but thick skin, it did not give me a thick skin.
Because that's why I want to talk about this. Again, these books, not a prop if you're actually watching us on video on Lessons in Leadership with Steve and Mary, but Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When the Stakes Are High. This is a wonderful book, New York Times bestseller. It's on our leadership library, which is on our website at stand-deliver.com. Why do I mention this? Because I know we've talked about it before, but Michele and I talk about this a lot. We were raised, and it does have to do with leadership style, to confront everything, virtually all the time. Translation: crucial and difficult conversations that a lot of people avoid because it makes them uncomfortable. Colin Powell told me, as you know in the book, one of the great chapters is called Sometimes Great Leaders.
Yeah, tend to piss people off.
And sometimes it's because of these conversations. There's a question here, trust me. Did you have to learn to have, quote, crucial/difficult, uncomfortable conversations? You have to, as a leader, did you have to learn that?
I had to learn how to have those conversations with others, but first I needed to learn how to receive those conversations. When someone was giving me that feedback, when somebody was saying that something that I did really wasn't as good, well, I tried really hard, and we often hear that. And for me, it was a learned skill. I learned by reading. I learned by Googling, okay, how do I handle this conversation? Just last week, I had to Google how to handle a situation. Because
did you really?
I really did.
Was that the one we had at work or another one?
No, it was totally another one. But
it was all about me.
It was, no, I don't want to bring family into it, but it was literally just how to deal when your son is disappointed after a game or because they weren't played or.
We've been there.
You know, because you think you're doing the right thing at work and leading others. And sometimes is it to say something? Is it to not say something? Is it, oh, I Do you feel sorry for them? Do you empathize with them? Because you don't really know what it's like to be in their shoes. So I did a lot of reading growing up and into adulthood in terms of having those conversations, and more importantly, the consequences of not having those conversations for me was eye-opening, because if you don't have those conversations that are so hard, nothing's going to change.
And by the way, I was mentioning this before, if you're watching us on the video side, this baseball, which isn't just a regular baseball, it is a Little League baseball, and it is signed by a bunch of kids.
Oh,
You're wondering
I didn't know
what
that.
is this fun, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the last time I coached. Talk about leadership. Last time I coached our sons, not travel team because the stakes would be too high.
Yeah.
It was the rec team, and I remember, and all the kids signed it. And I remember, you talk about, a game doesn't turn out well, or he or she, and Mary and I have teenage boys, and we also have our daughter Olivia, who's 9. Those conversations have to take place because we are the parent. We have to have them. They're difficult, and with our kids, sometimes it's not doing well in school, whatever. But here's what I'm going to. You and I had a conversation recently. It was a crucial and important conversation that we actually had talked about beforehand with a particular team member. And I remember you and I were talking about it, and we said beforehand, what's our goal? Let's play this out. And by the way, one of the great things about this book, Crucial Conversation Tools, which I use in our seminars in leadership, is that there are some things you can do, and one of them before it is to determine what exactly is your goal. To be honest and put it out there, you want to get to a certain place. How important is it to know going in, A, what your goal is, and B, if it's veering off, you and I talked before, and what do we do? Am I over analyzing this?
Not at all, not at all. And in any situation, you need to, first of all, understand what the problem is, right? You need to say, this is exactly what, as we see it.
Which may not be as the other person sees it. Go ahead.
Exactly. And then, as you said, come up with a goal. All right, at the end of this conversation, what I hope is this person is going to make sure to meet that deadline, and without me reminding him or her to meet the deadline, just using an example. But then you also need to anticipate the pushback, the questions, the defensiveness, because human nature, everyone's going to get very defensive.
So don't assume in great leadership and communication, I'm going to say what I need to say, and the other person is going to be very receptive, and it's going to work out well. That would be nice, but that's not a strategy.
No, that is not a strategy at all. And if anything, some people are actually really good at arguing, so you may start second guessing yourself, and you don't want to sit there humming and trying to figure out and be like, ooh, I never thought of it that way, or maybe they're right. And not that you need to be rigid, because that's not a good leadership style either, but you do need to have a roadmap going into the conversation of the if-then, where am I going to go with this? And then most importantly, at the end of that conversation, what are you going to agree to, both of you, to do next?
And we put this in writing.
Yes.
Why?
If you don't put it in writing, number one, time's going to pass and you're going to forget what happened. And then 3 months down the line, if a similar situation happens and you say, remember a few months ago we were talking about this? I don't remember that. You have it in writing. So it's not to play gotcha, but oftentimes it's to help me to remember, was it as bad as I thought it was? Is it really just because I don't really particularly enjoy being with that person? Is it the thing or is it the person? So you need to really analyze as a leader, is it the personality, is it the person, or is it the problem at hand?
I'm going to say something that I'm not even sure I was supposed to be saying on the air on Lessons in Leadership. Again, thank our friends, otherwise known as the people who sponsor what we're doing at Prager Metis, New Jersey Resources, RWJ Barnabas Health, also the folks at Valley and the folks at Gibbons, PC, Local 825 operating engineers, et cetera, et cetera. So let's do this. You said to me recently, in no uncertain terms, your, quote, attitude and level of patience with excuse making, finger pointing. I'm holding up the book. Mary, tell everyone what I'm holding up.
Extreme Ownership.
Which is, in fact, written by 2 Navy SEALs who said no excuses, no blame, no finger pointing. You said to me, Steve, maybe it's age, which clearly is not your case because you're so young. You said, I don't have no, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not going to listen as long as I always have in the past.
Yeah.
What's going on with you?
That's a great question.
Don't think that I ignore when you said that. It struck me. Go ahead.
No, and this is actually a great thing to talk about because I'm challenged, and if anyone's listening and they want to just chime in and send an email, they can do so.
How can they do that?
They could do that. They could reach me, actually. I'll even give out my personal email right here because it's probably the quickest way to get to me. It's marygamba@aol.com. Shoot me an email because I would love some advice on this this one.
Mary's home address is?
Yes.
Okay.
My height and weight.
Go ahead.
And so we were talking about this because I feel like my empathy, like I have zero empathy.
Your empathy, hold on, you just started this show talking, wait a minute.
I said I learned it.
Go back and learn what Mary said about her family taught her about empathy. Go ahead.
It did. I learned it, and now it's done a complete 180. I have almost, I would say, zero empathy at this point in my life. And you could ask my husband, you can ask the kids. It's bad. But on the flip side, as a leader, it helps you to confront things in a much more effective way if you can go in and take out the emotion out of it. So in the situation that you and I were talking about.
Which anyone out there is listening or watching us, it's an employee who in a particular situation may not meet the level of performance that is expected because that is what is expected to be great, as Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great says, the performance, it's an issue.
And it could be, exactly, and anyone listening
Could be an incident.
It could be anything.
Go ahead.
But taking empathy out of the equation helps you to be, and I don't want to say cold-hearted, but it helps you to see the issue at hand. It helps you to realize the consequences of not addressing that issue. So for me, it was really just a matter of, I don't know if it's age or what, but I have less of an issue confronting problems because if you don't, the behavior is not going to change. And then you could teach others. We were talking before with your sister, Michele.
Michele, check out the earlier version. It's Michele Adubato, the CEO of the North Ward Center.
Yep, absolutely. And we were talking to her just really about succession planning. And my goal, again, and as we all are getting older, is to really just help those that are newer to working with us grow within the organization. So when the time comes and the sun sets, then there's a whole other tribe of people there that can really help us out and keep that organization moving forward.
Is that our job?
It is. And I think that across the board, you can name any organization, healthcare, banking, anything, finance, any type of business, you need to be training and coaching and mentoring. So this way the next group can then take over where you left off.
One of the things I want to touch on, and we will talk about it in a later program in more depth, but I am curious about this. This book is simply called Blind Spots. If you're looking on camera, you can see this. Blind spots. I'm going to open up the Pandora's box. You know where that comes from?
The term blind spot?
You know what it's in reference to?
Is it the horses?
So blind spots, Mary and I do this thing. We ask our clients, we do leadership seminars, we do executive coaching, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things I ask people to do is the hub and spokes model. Would you describe what it is?
Yeah, the hub and spokes. So really, if you are in business, again, any type of building relationships, you put yourself at the center.
You're
in
the hub.
hub.
It's a circle.
You're the hub.
Draw a
It's
circle for yourself.
Okay.
If you're watching or listening, draw a circle. I'm doing it right now. I'm putting Steve in the circle. Now, what are the spokes?
And then the spokes are almost like on a tire, where you have the metal bar, the bicycle tire, the metal bars coming out, and then there's little bubbles on the side. In those little bubbles, you could fill in whether it's your board members, whether it's your clients, your customers. It could be the media, depending.
Your family.
It could be your family.
Who are they? Stakeholders?
Stakeholders, anybody that matters in your life, anybody that either makes you a better person, brings in business, if they are there to support you. It could be your attorney. It could be your accountant. It's people in your orbit that you need to make sure that you're constantly connecting with on a regular basis to keep everything moving forward.
Including every person on your team.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And that being said, the reason why blind spots got my attention, and again, it'll be in our leadership library in the last minute we have on lessons in leadership, it's that I'm very focused on blind spots. Mm-hmm. And if you're not looking for where your spots, where you're clouded, or you don't see who you need to be dealing with, who you may not have connected with, who on your team you're losing track of, who in your orbit is not feeling the love, all of a sudden it's the last minute, late in the fourth quarter, and you're like, what do I do to fix this? And this whole concept of blind spots, and again, we'll talk about it in greater detail in another edition of Lessons in Leadership, really helps us stay on track.
Yeah, no,
That's
absolutely.
That's all I got. That's another edition of Lessons in Leadership, funded by?
It is funded by our friends at New Jersey Resources, Prager Metis, RWJ Barnabas Health, and many more.
Valley Bank, as well as Local 825, the operating engineers, so many others. I'm Steve Adubato. That is Mary Gamba. By the way, folks, go on our website. What is it again?
stand-deliver.com, and they can follow us on Facebook at Steve Adubato, PhD. That's Adubato.
Thank you, folks. Steve and Mary, Lessons in Leadership. Catch you next time.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
This edition of Lessons in Leadership is brought to you by Gibbons PC, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, New Jersey Resources, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825.